kids, welcome to Odd Duck Foundry. Today, in this video, it's been a while since I've put one up, but I'm going to show you the process of machining my Canadian Pacific tabletop switch stand kit. And this is the first one I've actually completed and put in place, and as you can see, it works pretty good. It's that simple. And it's a very simple target on it. If you see it head on like this, and you see the target, it is reversed, and this is reversed because that's going through the bypass for the loop right now, which is all I have set up. And if you don't see the target, if all you see is the edge on, you're aligned for the main. And this is an actual reproduction of an original CP target for these. So that is correct for the period that these were built. There are still a bunch of these in use on the Moosehead sub and on the Bangor sub in Maine. And that is where I got the basic design from. Because, well, I work for Canadian Pacific and I see them every day. They've been there for over 100 years and they're still working every single day. So, without further ado, let's show you how it's done. And here's the basic kit. And this is the major components of it. There's a few things that aren't in here, like the operating rod and, you know, nuts and bolts, things like that. That's something that will have to be provided by the end user. And I'm going to show you a couple of different ways to machine this. And it can be done with hand tools very easily. I'm going to show you that, and I'm going to show you how to machine it also. Most of it can be done with our friend the angle grinder, if you really needed to. And it'll come out just fine. But this is the main body. And this one's got a couple of rough spots on it. I had a little bit of dropout in the mold when I was casting it. So it's not perfect, but it'll get the idea across. And the main thing you have to do on this one is you have to grind off or machine off the draft on the top and the bottom on the feet here. This is the tabletop, this is the feet. And you can see it's got quite a bit of draft on it. So if you want it sitting flat, you've got to cut that off or grind it off or something. And I'll show you a couple of different ways to do that. And then you have to just basically drill the hole down through it for the operating rod. And drill a couple of holes like here and here to mount it to your ties. And clean it up, of course. This one's already sort of cleaned up a little bit. And we got the, this is the bell crank for the operating rod for the actual switch. And that goes on the bottom down here. And you can cut it off shorter if you need to. And this is the top nut. I'm not exactly sure what this is actually called in the original plans, but it's got a slot for the operating rod here. And this divot here is for the pin that goes through it to pin it to the operating rod, so it will actually turn the operating or the vertical rod when it comes time for it. And this is the target. Very simple. And first step is going to be just cleaning these up with an angle grinder, getting all the casting flash off, cutting the gating off. Oh, one little note on the operating rod here. You can see it right here. This little bump out right here is for the hasp or hook or lock, if you want to put a lock on your switch to keep it from being inadvertently thrown. And the way that works is we have our top nut here. When this goes in, the pivot is down here a little ways. You put your hook in, and when you go to turn that hook prevents motion, or prevents that handle from coming out too far and allowing you to turn the switch, throw the switch. So that's what that's for. That's just not a little random nubby. That's actually there on purpose. And all the originals have that. Okay, here's the important bit. I'm going to show how to, with the aid of the angle grinder, to flatten out this top right here and the feet right here and get rid of the draft. Okay, now unfortunately this takes a little while, but start in the center, work your way out, eyeball it. This doesn't have to be perfectly flat. I mean, let's face it, it's a switch throw, and as long as it works, oh great. You can be as precise or imprecise as you want, and I can almost guarantee that it'll still probably work if you set your switch up right. Alright, so let's get on with cleaning this up. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to flatten out the tabletop on this one. Again, start in the center, work your way to the edges. That way it keeps it nice and flat. Pardon the back of my head. Bring the camera over here and show you. You'll notice that I'm starting here in the center. You can already see I'm going to work this down. It also helps if you have like a higher grit flap disc on your angle grinder. It makes it go a lot quicker. Don't use a grinding stone. Grinding stones with aluminum, they will load up and go boom. Don't do that. Use a flap disc if you're using an angle grinder. This can also be done with a file if you were really masochistic and or you were broke and didn't have anything. But most shops will usually have at least an El Cheapo Harbor Freight angle grinder. And they work fine for what they are, and they do a good job. So, like I said, you're going to start in the middle. Try to keep it as flat as you can. Eyeball it as you go. Perfection isn't necessarily necessary, but it does help. You know, do a nice job. You got something. This isn't exactly what you'd call a cheap stand. I mean, the kit total is about $75. It takes a little bit of effort to cast one of these, and the pattern wasn't easy to do, even though it came out pretty nice. But yeah, so here we go. We'll keep going. All right. There we go. Not too bad. You'll notice that it is much flatter. It's square to where the vertical operating rod is going to be going. And our top nut sits on it fairly flat. That's exactly what you're looking for right there. Okay? You want it so that this can rotate smoothly. It sits about right there. And be very careful. That's hot. That causes a lot of heat when you do it that way. Now, all you gotta do is flip it over. Do the same process for the bottom, for the feet. Clean that up. Make sure that's nice and flat. Again, start in the center. Work your way out towards the edges. A flat edge of some type or other works real well to help you visualize this. And if you can, you want it so that it's going to be sitting with this square to this surface up here. Alright, here we are. Flatten top and bottom. And the goal here is you just want it to sit flat without wobbling. Because remember, you're going to be putting holes here to bolt it down to your ties. And the bottom's flat. And you also want it sitting so that top is relatively square to the base. So that when you throw your operating handle, it won't bind up on you. So that's the goal with that. All right, on to some holes. All right, next step is drilling the hole for your vertical operating rod. And it's pretty easy to find. You'll notice in the middle here we have nice big bosses. And that is for a little extra room for your vertical operating rod to go through, a little bit of a support for it. So what we're going to do is we're going to find top and bottom location for those holes. And they're sized to whatever rod you can find. I just happen to find this in the shop. It's an odd size, but guess what? It'll work. All right. Very easy to find center for these. All we've got to do is locate that center boss, eyeball about where center is going to be on it, and make a mark. That's pretty close. And you do the same thing up here. And if you want to, come over to the other side, do the same thing. Eyeball it. This one's a little bit offset, so I'm going to correct it by eyeball and just connect the dots right there. And as far as the center goes, simply measure across, 1.5 inches, so 3/4 of an inch in. If I can hold it right. Make a mark. Again, if it doesn't look quite right, eyeball it. There's our center right there. That's where we're going to be putting the hole for the vertical operating rod. And on the bottom, same thing. Okay. There's your boss. Make a mark. Do the same thing on the other side. Make a mark roughly in the center. Join the two. Down here it's actually a little bit easier. You should be able to eyeball a little bit better because that's the parting line on the casting, and that's going to be centered. So easy peasy. Grab our punch and our hammer. There we go. We have our centers marked. All we gotta do is drill them out. And drill your pilot hole first. And try to keep this as square as possible. Drill your top and bottom holes in one. There's the top. One more. Ta-da! All right. And as you can see, not too shabby. That one's pretty well centered. This one's pretty well centered. That's what we're looking for. And here's our drill 4. Again, this is just a piece of rod I had on hand. It is a weird size. Something tells me it's metric, but I measured it out as close as I can. And it is also as dull as the proverbial hoe, so if you'll excuse me for a second. And since you really didn't want me to watch me drill a hole, there you go, both holes drilled. That's exactly the way that should look. Now our vertical operating rod is done, and this casting, for all intents and purposes, is done. On to the next one, and it's basically just drilling some matching holes and getting the other bits ready to put together. And we'll probably go to the drill press for that, because these other holes you want fairly square and accurate. So we'll run into the drill press and take care of those. And welcome to the drill press area of the shop, the absolute mess that it is. And you can see on these castings, this is the top nut casting, there is a dimple. This is where you want to put your hole. So I've tried to make it as simple as possible. And this is your bottom bell crank. Same thing. There's a hole. There's a little dimple there to show you where to put your center hole through. I do have the target casting here. And basically just find the center. Do the same thing. You want to drill a shallow-ish hole. Shallow-ish. You don't want to go, you don't want to go through the top of it. But this is just going to be sitting on top of the vertical rod anyways. So we might do that one by hand. You could do these by hand. It's just a little bit more accurate to do them with a drill press, and you want these running kind of square, as square as possible. So we'll just drill these on the drill press because I happen to have one. It's just an El Cheapo drill press, nothing special. And I'll drill them and I will show you the results. Back with you in a minute. Yeah, here we go. All done with those. holes all drilled. Again, you don't really want to watch me drilling holes, but you'll notice it is ready to go. Vertical rod is, operating rod is in, and you'll notice that I also drilled the cross holes in the bell crank and the upper nut. Figured I'd get those done while I was right at it. And I haven't put a set screw on that yet. I don't know if I'm going to, because the wall thickness turned out to be not all that terribly great. So remains to be seen. Now, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how to trim the top and the bottom on the lathe. The metal lathe. If you've got a mill big enough to do this, God bless you. Go for it. You probably know better how to do that than I am, but I'm going to show you how I do this on the lathe. And it's a little bit quicker, a little more accurate, but if you don't have one big enough to swing, your problem is going to be the feet here, because they're going to be able to clear the ways. But we'll show you that, and then we'll get into the detail bits on how to set up the handle. All right, on to it. All right, doing one of these on the lathe. Here is the setup. Basically, I cleaned this one up, and this one is, it's another kind of, sort of, not perfect, so I couldn't sell it, because the mold, as you can see here, offset a little bit. So, fine for my uses, and once I get it cleaned up, you know, nobody's ever going to be able to tell. Paint and spack will hide all sins, you know. But basically all I did is I cleaned it up, took the flash off of the base, stuck it in my 4-jaw here. That's that's quite secure right there. Drilled a couple of pilots, one on the head end here, one on the bottom. So when I rotate it, when I flip this around after I flatten the table out, I can go ahead and flatten the feet out also. And this is a pretty firm setup. And we'll get you set up in the stand, and I'll make some cuts. And this should clean up pretty slick. I'm also going to see about rounding that down too. Getting that down to a single dimension there, instead of having that bump. Clean her right up. Okay. Of course, the phone died in the middle of filming the last section, so I wasn't able to show you the finished results on this end, but you can see over here, that did a really nice, quick job of that. And both the top and the bottom should be parallel. I'll take this out of here. I'll show you. And if you try to do this method, please be careful. It's not a lot of mass in there, but these nice big spinny bits, that'll take your finger off, no problem. So be careful, please, and thank you. Use your head when you're doing it. All right. And we'll take it out and show it with the other one here. Sits nice and flat, and that's how you do it with a lathe. So, on to the parts that make it work. I'm going to be doing this one next after I charge my phone. Stay tuned. And here is our nut. It's pretty well cleaned up. Let's see if we can get it in. Yep, here we go. All right. And you'll notice this is where the operating handle is going to be going in. And you can see there's a little bit of flash there. So step number one, you got to clean that up. Okay, no big deal. And just to show you, this is the operating handle, and I've cleaned all the flash off of that. I have drilled the pivot hole, and I have drilled the hole through the locking hasp bit right there. And I've got a couple of mea culpas to show you on this too. A couple of minor errors in my planning and pattern making process that in future casting sessions or in future casting efforts for this are going to be corrected. They're very minor things, easily worked around, so I'll show you. Okay, stand by. I'm going to clean up the nut first, get that all taken care of, and then we'll come back to it. All right, I've got the nut all cleaned up. I've got the flash cleaned out, and you can see a little bit better here the shape of the hole. And again, in future castings, this is going to be corrected because I've just basically got to correct the core print or the core mold a little bit. And I think I'm going to be getting rid of this narrowed section up here because you can see this is another casting. This is not cleaned up yet, but you can see this is a little bit thick right there, the way the other one was. And it just doesn't fit. Should fit, but it doesn't, and it won't. And again, that was a design flaw on my part. I thought I had it all figured out, but you know, nothing ever goes perfectly smoothly. But again, this is a pretty easily remedied solution. The solution to this, after you get this all cleaned up, is just narrow that section down so that it matches that core print right there. See, that goes in there nicely now, rotates, ta-da, away we go. Very easy. But again, in future casting sessions, I'm going to fix that core box, and I'm going to get rid of that narrowed section. That's probably the easiest solution for the whole thing. But this is how you solve the problem for right now. Or you just grind those sections out right there. So all I got to do now for this is I've got to drill the pivot hole. And I'll take care of that off camera because, again, it's just a hole who wants to watch me drilling holes. And we'll come back to it. All right. And here we are with the pivot hole all drilled. And this is about the correct placement for this. You can see that if you pull it up, if you had something, oh, let's say a nail or something, I'll just get a little piece of wood here to reference. Say this was your keeper right here, this little piece of wood. You wanted to avoid that switch being thrown inadvertently. That's what would happen right there. I suggest making like a little blacksmith hook or something to go through there, or a lock would not be inappropriate for that either, because you can see it'll pick up far enough to allow you to throw the switch, come back, and it'll drop down by gravity, and your switch will be very secure. Now, on to the next minor design error, and something that's pretty easily corrected. If you look here, here's our target. And say we had our target set to 90 degrees there. And right at the moment, with the raw casting, we turn it. It unfortunately turns past 90 degrees. There's a reason for this. Is when I made the patterns, I did not compensate for the thickness of this. So, to correct this problem, to have that throw at exactly 90 degrees backwards and forwards, all you're going to have to do is come up here. You're going to have to go in about 1/16 of an inch on each side of the tabletop here and just cut that off. And that will compensate for the thickness of the operating handle. and allow that to turn 90 degrees. You can see the cross-hatched areas right there. That's what you got to cut off. Now, am I going to correct this on the pattern? No, because the pattern is done and it works very nicely. I don't want to mess with that. Not to sound lazy, but this is all you've got to do to fix that problem. If you don't care whether it's 90 degrees or not, Bob's your uncle. You don't even have to mess with this. Okay, but where I have that round target right there, if you use like a the typical circle and arrow target, you know, the four-way target for switches, this might be an issue. You might want to take care of that. If you don't care, if you just want to switch to throw a switch, you don't necessarily need to worry about that. But this is how to correct that. You've got to come in 3/16 of an inch, cut that section off, come over here 3/16 of an inch, cut that section off, and that will correct for the thickness of that operating handle. Again, a minor design error on my part. So that's how you repair that. And when you're done, there you go. All you have to do after that is drill your pivot hole, drill your cross hole. When you've determined the height of your vertical rod, and drill the hole down here for the crank, and determine the length of the rod. Paint it up, screw it in, set your switch up, and there you go. So, in a nutshell, that is how to assemble the Odd Duck Foundry CP switch stand kit. If you have any questions, please email me at the address below, and I will be more than happy to answer them. Hope you have a good day.